The case that we took to trial was a father and son who were being evicted and asked to leave because the owner of the property claimed that she wanted to move into the unit that they were living in.
And the case happened in the middle of 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic. And a lot of people lost their jobs, they lost their abilities to pay rent, they lost their apartments.
Finnegan's helped out quite a bit with the housing clinics that CLSEPA puts on. I had a really good experience helping out with the housing clinic, and I asked what other ways can we get involved. When the case actually started to go to trial and we realized that we weren't going to be settling, we were nervous. This was a very difficult case, and we told our clients about that.
And it was tremendous value to have CLSEPA attorney there every step along the way. That makes a huge difference because as someone who specializes in intellectual property, we have very little understanding about housing matters, and CLSEPA play a very important role in helping us with that.
Once we left the courtroom, that's when we got to talk to our clients. We got to break down exactly what happened, and they were thrilled. They were absolutely ecstatic, and we could see on their face that this was huge. This was life-changing, being able to keep their housing.
And after they fully appreciate and understand the jury verdict, they hug us. They gave us bear hugs with teary eyes, with sparks of hope in their eyes. And I would say that was the most wonderful experience of all the trials I have ever handled.
My clients were two men who were working for a high-end florist shop in San Mateo. And they'd been working there for many years. Both were Latino, and both had been just totally exploited the entire time that they had worked at this shop. They were given the harder, more manual labor type tasks. They were told they had to do that work because they were, quote, Mexican. They weren't allowed to speak Spanish in the workplace. The owner of the shop regularly berated them and humiliated them and even hit them. They weren't allowed to take breaks, whereas the non-Latino workers were allowed to take breaks. And when they finally, after all of these years, went to their boss's office and said, hey, we've learned that we have the right to take breaks, and you haven't been treating us according to the labor code, he said, well, in that case, I guess I'm going to have to examine your work authorization papers. So it was a threat. It was an implied threat. And they resigned from their job at that point. They couldn't take it anymore. And so we brought a constructive termination claim on that basis. But one of the things that I can't do very much of based on our business model in private practice is take on a lot of individual cases for clients who work for fairly small employers. But I'm still committed to making sure that the rights of those low-income workers get enforced, and partnering with an organization like CLSEPA is a way for me to do that. My hope is that by bringing this case and by resolving this case, that they were able to achieve some degree of healing from the experience that they went through, as well as get back on their feet economically after losing their jobs.
Thank you all so much for being with us here tonight and for sharing stories about the fantastic work that you've been doing with clients and with CLSEPA. I'm Christina Dos Santos, and here with us tonight we have Ming Yang from Finnegan, Henderson, Faribault, Garrett, and Dunner, Jordan Fraboni, also from Finnegan, and we have Becky Peterson-Fisher from Liu Peterson-Fisher LLP. Welcome, thank you all so much for being with us tonight. And so I'm going to start with the question of what motivates you to serve the community, like in the ways that you have through your partnership with CLSEPA.
You know, I went to law school to use law as a method of advancing social justice. That was my main motivation. So, you know, my heart is really in that work. And, you know, here in California, many of the glossy, shiny things we have are produced on the backs of immigrant labor. And one of the things that I want to do, in addition to representing executives in Silicon Valley, is also represent the low-income workers who are in this area and this community. And so this was a way for me to continue doing that.
I think for me, there's a bit of it that was the drive of community service. So as I was growing up in high school and college, I did things like peer tutoring, and that was one of the first instances I had of seeing where I could use the knowledge or skill set that I had in a way that could really help people. And I think having the opportunity to go to law school and be a lawyer and develop a very specialized set of skills that not everybody has the opportunity to do, it meant that the type of work that I was doing and the way that I could give back and get that same feeling of helping people, I could do it at an even more important professional level.
Growing up, I had a younger sister who became intellectually challenged and disabled at age 4. So having a member in our family like that allowed me to appreciate the fact that there are many people who don't have the resources you and I take for granted. They are the people in our community, and they are the people that can even be in our family. And growing up, I learned to appreciate the fact that sometimes if the community doesn't lend a helping hand, it can become a major challenge for any family and any members of the community facing difficulties.
So Ming shared a very powerful story from his upbringing that motivated him and brought him to the work and to the service. Is there anything that anyone else would like to share about how your upbringing has influenced what brought you to this moment?
I can share. So I started my coming out process when I was 14 in 1994 in LA, and it was an extremely hostile environment. I had a girlfriend at school, at a big public high school, and I was just subjected to many homophobic slurs every day, pushed around, tires slashed, threatened by the principals with discipline. Just all sorts of awful things happened. And one of the things that I turned to help me get through that was activism. At the end of my senior year, we had a real triumph, which is that we were voted the cutest couple in our high school, which was actually the first time that had ever happened in LAUSD. You know, I really saw change happening and people's minds changing, and people told me that things that we had done and just being there and being ourselves had actually changed their points of view. And so I think I've been on that path ever since. I've been involved in activism ever since.
Yeah, Becky, it's a fantastic story that you've had, and it actually means something to me too. So I also came out, but a little bit later after I went to high school. And I think if it wasn't for people like you taking that initiative and starting to make those connections with the community, I think it would have been much more difficult for someone like me to also go through that. So the fact that I had people who were trailblazing, who were setting those examples and doing that work early on, it makes it easier for everyone else, especially, I speak for myself, but it makes it so much easier for other people to see that path of how they can help the community.
Thank you. Well, it's been absolutely inspirational and fascinating to hear about the different experiences that kind of brought you to this moment and that motivate you, and also some of the really powerful overlap between some of those experiences. Thank you so much for sharing your enthusiasm and passion and what it's meant to you to work with CLSEPA and with the clients. I'd love to ask about whether you have thoughts on the impact of this type of service work on the community more broadly.
As we go through jury trials, as we defend people's rights, more and more people in the community and more jurors are hearing about these stories, are hearing about people getting evicted when when their rights are not being protected. So I think the broader impact of not only about standing behind the people who needed the service, but also about getting the community to know our own people, getting the community to appreciate their rights, to respect their rights.
And to Ming's point, it's not just about hearing the stories or that they're hearing what's going on. It's that when they come back with a verdict in the tenant's favor, they're saying that they understand that these are important rights and that they deserve to be protected. So for me, seeing the jury come back with that type of verdict and really think about these issues, knowing that the community is on individuals facing hardship side, that's really important. And I think that's a huge impact that the work that we do has.
We may have quite a few people in our audience tonight who are considering doing pro bono work with CLSEPA. And I would love if you could share one thing, each of you could share one thing that you feel our audience really should know.
I would say it's an opportunity to continue to grow, and I mean that in multiple respects. There's the technical legal aspect, if you're going to be donating your time to help out with that, and then there's the growth as a person to connect with other people and to keep that front and center and continue finding ways to improve the service that you can provide people. So in many different ways, the growth that you can get out of those opportunities is not something that I have found in other places.
I will say, CLSEPA needs you to volunteer because the amount of people who need legal services and can't afford legal services is staggering. It's absolutely staggering. And no legal services organization can come close to filling that gap. And so every little bit helps, and it helps somebody's life, and it helps in a really concrete way. And it helps this organization, but it also helps the whole community, and it helps you be a whole and complete person by giving back to the community.
And I would add that all the audience members, I'm sure you're all great, and you're all very good at what you do. But by working with CLSEPA, you can be superheroes of our community because you're talking about people who really need the resources. These are the people who felt that the door is already closed on them. But by working with CLSEPA, they are now seeing open doors. They are now seeing opportunities.
You've all spoken really eloquently about the ways in which this work can have a broader impact on our community at large. And I'd love to turn it a little introspective and inward-facing around the ways that being involved in this work might change us within ourselves, change us in our personal lives, if anyone would like to speak to that.
When I think about the cases that I've worked on for CLSEPA, I think about those are the people that really need the help. Those are the people that do not have the financial ability to otherwise get help. They don't have somewhere else to turn. And whatever the systems are that are in place are not working as they should. And we need to enforce legal rights, and we need to be able to step in and help.
I think it's made me a better person because it's made me a more understanding and less judgmental person. I don't know how many times in my life I've heard people say, why doesn't that homeless guy just get a job? But, I think about people trying to raise their families while living in a car, having fled domestic violence.
Now I'm able to tell my 10-year-old daughter about what her daddy does on a daily basis. As an IP attorney, I work on patents, I work on trade secrets, I work on licenses. But when I explained that to my daughter, she couldn't understand any of that. But after I spent a full day defending father and son in a jury trial for allowing them to stay in their housing, my daughter could really appreciate that. My daughter can talk about how her daddy defended people's rights so they have a place to stay, they have a roof to live under, and they have a bed to sleep on.
I just want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to be with us this evening at our virtual fundraising gala, for your vulnerability and insight into everything that you've shared. It's been really powerful and moving to hear. And I also want to express our profound gratitude for the many hours of dedicated service that you have put in to serving our community and CLSEPA and our clients. We are extremely grateful, and thank you all so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you tonight. Thank you.